I'm happy to have Siddharth from Deloitte. He's the consulting partner and leader for technology, media, and telecommunications at Deloitte, and he has led projects across India, Africa, Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asian part. So now it's a pleasure to have him on the Budget Station Live. Uh, Before I get on to posing questions to Sid, probably I'll give a brief highlights of what was mentioned in the budget by Nirmala Sitharaman on the investment, on the innovation and technology front. Uh, for research and development, I think 20,000 crore was allocated for private sector driven research and development initiatives. The 10,000 fellowships for technological research in IITs and ISU over the next 5 years was announced. The National Geospatial Mission to develop infrastructure and kind of data for modernizing land records were announced. And Center for Excellence, again, 500 crore was allocated for establishing AI Center of Excellence. So it's, and also the Bharat TradeNet from the digital infrastructure and internet point of things was announced. So let me cut straight to Sid. Sid, what is your take on the overall budget in terms of the technology front?
So I think clearly one theme which we've been very keenly observing is how would the government kind of look at promoting innovation and R&D. This year, I think it's been quite exciting on some of the aspects which you mentioned, plus I think one more. So clearly, about a $2.5 billion, 20,000 crore allocation for specifically innovation R&D, I think is extremely heartening to look at. Also, the fellowship, the PM fellowship scheme for 10,000 fellowships, that's hopefully going to lead to a lot of India-led research and innovation as well. And why this is important is traditionally, and we see this coming more so in technology and all the innovations which are now recently happening in AI around. Our historical R&D spending as a percentage of GDP has been, relatively low compared to global average, right? So we spend at about 1.8% or so. And there have been many nations who have been at the forefront of innovation. So if you look at a place like Israel, that's got 5.5%, which is spent on innovation and R&D of GDP. South Korea is at about 5%. And there are many other nations, whether even US is 3.5. So clearly, I think it's a step in the right direction. And hopefully we will see a lot more India-led, right? The other aspect was also the DeepTech fund of funds. We did see a precursor of this in the earlier budget. But I think very interesting to see how that also leads to more startup incubation particularly on deep tech as well. So I think this was clearly a significant highlight as far as technology was concerned.
Going back on this, considering that China's DeepSeek has created so much wave in the past week or 10 days, uh, has this fund come late to us, or do you think it's enough, or we are in the right direction? It's pointing towards the right direction in terms of driving innovation.
It's never too late. I would just leave it at that. Obviously, I think India has been a nation of limited resources and different priorities at different point in time. So I would say it's never too late, and hopefully this kind of kickstarts a whole different era of R&D innovation for all of us here.
Right. Like you compared to other countries, I think the government has constantly been pushing that the private sector investments in R&D has been less, and then they've been constantly making a sound that the private sector need to push in and then bring investment. So why the sudden draw of bringing in the private investment that they're talking about?
Well, it's both, right? I mean, if you compare, we want to, it's probably two engines, right? So the fellowship program will lead to a lot more academic interest, academic-led innovation, more funding, and then there's the corporate side, right? So obviously, I think it's kind of a two-engine play, which hopefully the government is looking at and really drive an impetus via both.
Right. Now, over the last few months, we see a lot of companies are setting up data centers in India. Now, while it is crucial for the digital service, would a certain tax break have been in a better position? What do you say on that? Because the industry was
Um,
expecting certain kind of tax breaks on that.
so yeah, subsectors will be always interested. So hopefully the turn will be next time in the queue. I'm sure there are many subsectors in the queue for some kind of a break, whether it's on a direct tax break, an indirect tax break, or potentially investment PLI based one of those incentives as well. I think data center investments have reached a point where there is both very high degree of local interest, high degree of global interest. So I think probably the tax break, since the engine has already started to roll, I think there are certainly other sectors where this could have been prioritized a bit more. Having said that, I think digital infrastructure or connectivity as a theme of the nation, I think it remains fairly top of the agenda. We Because I think if you've seen the narrative since about the last 6 or 7 years, BharatNet has been the engine to drive national connectivity, right? Whether it's the hinterland, deeper parts of India. Now I think BharatNet has a new mandate of obviously connecting to the schools and all that. So I think hopefully while data center as a topic has a different connectivity requirement, high bandwidth, very low latency, and that will I think continue the BharatNet focused on connecting the whole nation, I think is also quite good to see. And we didn't see BharatNet the last, I think, year. So I think it's come back again. So digital infrastructure and that connectivity theme of India remains front and center of the agenda as well.
Right. So are you hopeful that it would bring in kind of a foreign investment or boost employment in India, kind of a set up a new growth trajectory for us?
I think, see, data center, are you talking about the broad BharatNet connectivity or the data center one?
The data center part of it.
So data center expansion or making India as a, so to speak, as a hub in this part of the world is probably, so I think we need to clearly get to a significant scale. I think we are on that journey. So yeah, we'll see how that sort of pans out. But clearly, I think if you see most of the tier one cities, some tier two, I think there's a huge degree of activity, both global and local, when it comes to expanding the DC footprint in India. So that's very
Right.
heartening to see.
Right. And the government interestingly mentioned about bringing broadband to schools. How does this play out, considering that the digital divide, if you can talk about, and how the digital divide has played over the years and how it might help bridging the gap now?
So in telco, there is a metric which people call as teledensity. Teledensity means how many phones, smartphones, I mean, not smartphones, but how many subscribers exist for the population. So I think overall our nation is at about 1.2, 1.3. So for every person in India, there's about like 1.3 phones out there. But if you unpack this, the urban one is probably at 1.2 and the rural one is at about 50 or 55 or 58% thereabouts. Now you see the stark difference or the digital divide as you mentioned, right? So I think even if you see the smartphones which we use in urban, there are previous versions which are like a feature phone or a non-smartphone, which are basic connectivity sort of devices. So that doesn't give still a lot of the digital access to many people in hinterland. So clearly, I think uh, uh, schools and these kind of bodies being connected through broadband will start building that digital exposure with our young children and from a very early age as well. So yeah, and I think over a period as and the other correlation I would also draw is this whole Make in India push towards smartphone manufacture in India. So hopefully that also leads to better price points. Premium phones is one thing, but even sort of the entry phones, price points become a bit more easier. That leads to more adoption in sort of the whole of the nation. So let's see. But these are the two sort of indicators which I would observe.
Right. Just to be critical on that, on the Make in India front, while the government has put initiatives even before on the phone manufacturing in India, we haven't seen that on the adoption front. Right? We still see, probably Chinese-led players leading the market on the smartphone segment. Now, with the budget, with the current budget, do you see that that push is given, and then we will end up making in India and then taking over that control?
So I won't go into specific names, but I think clearly some of the large ones are starting to look at selling to India from India, and also using India as a hub to sell globally. I think we've seen really good progress over the last 2 years. I didn't see very specific mentions. So I think that policy and PLI continues. So hopefully, I believe that trajectory will go on its own path. So let's see how that sort of pans out.
Right. Now, coming to the semiconductor aspect of it. Now, a lot of AI talk is happening at the same time. The kind of chip making and semiconductor is also taking focus. Where do we stand, and what was expected from the government, and are we on the right track on this?
So I think, and specifically, obviously, no mention of anything around because policies have been set in motion. A lot of global organizations have leveraged the schemes to set up facilities. Uh, Semicon setup, manufacture at scale is a long journey. So I think it's not that you set up a plant and suddenly within 18 months you will start manufacturing. So I think all those facility build outs, scaling, capex, all that will take some time. So I think the policy has certainly facilitated attraction of investment. Now I think some sort of tenor has to follow through for us to see the outcomes.
Right. So, do you think on this front, technology transfers or kind of partnership with other players, global players, would kind of help in bring rather than setting up the whole infrastructure from ground?
That is happening. So I think most innovation or most, especially on new tech. Now, if you look at both on the uh, technology side or on the manufacture side, I think complete homegrown manufacture is obviously going to be hard because there's a huge engineering capability to catch up. So most of the investments which we will see will be likely in partnership with the large ones which are out there. So there will be this global, local kind of a partnership which will emerge and which we are already seeing, right? Whether it is data centers or it is on GPU infrastructure for that matter, right? I think India corporate is really looking at joining hands with the big global organizations to uh, then have that local footprint and capability being built out here.
Right. Now, coming to the AI front, considering that AI Media House largely covers AI as a broader topic, uh, the government, when they put out the economic survey report yesterday, there was a mention of AI 260 times in the report. And they acknowledged several development that were going on, latest development from LLMs to, kind of AGI, everything they spoke about. But when it came to the budget day document, perhaps not much that had come out. So how do you see this? And then, if you can throw some light on that.
I think this is the precursor. So I think the 500 allocation, 500 CR allocation you spoke about, I think that's the precursor. I think AI government has already crafted that AI mission and which is already sort of in the works. Um, Investments in LLM are already happening. So I guess allocation wise, possibly the coming year is when we would sort of expect a bit more. Yes, I think that could have been certainly something which all of us were hoping for, given that there's so much of sort of transformative impact which people are expecting out of this. But I guess this is something which we'll watch in the coming year or so. But it doesn't slow us down from what is already in flight. So the AI mission and sort of similar initiatives which government is taking, a lot of state governments also are on that trajectory as well. So I don't think it slows us down. So hopefully next year's allocation will give a even greater push to the AI front.
Right. Now, I would probably focus on the job creation part of it from the technology point of view, considering that the government has also mentioned that because of AI there will be job losses. At the same time, the government also acknowledges that through AI we're going to upskill on this front. How do you see the AI adoption in India, and is there a threat of that?
So I think agentic AI as a topic, which or a digital FT as a topic, is certainly being looked at by Indian MNCs, even capability centers as an innovation. So I think a lot of use cases are being looked at to see, how could an initial support be looked at by replay. So I think BPM, some parts of the BPM industry, which is there, business process management industry, is certainly looks at being impacted by an agentic AI or a digital FT as a. But I believe for as most technology evolutions happen, there we want eventually come to a point of coexistence. So because probably as you replace a human with digital, there would be probably ways and means to continue to keep the digital humanized as well. So I would think that there would be other facets which would unravel for resources and skills to and people to upskill themselves in and hopefully. So I would say more than a threat, it's a different opportunity. It's a changing world, and one needs to obviously adapt. So that's how I would probably perceive that. Um, as far as the broad theme of technology skills in India is concerned, I think even the acknowledgement of GCC and a push for GCC, Global Capability Centers in tier 2 cities, that was also, I think, extremely good because that also gives greater ability for young students and STEM and IT professionals from even tier 2 to have access to now cutting edge organizations which are out there, right? So I believe that whole technology skill story from India and having a whole diversity of skills at scale, I think there's very few nations globally which provide that. So I think we will continue to see a lot of hopefully GCC expansion in coming to India as things go along.
Right. As you rightly mentioned, I think the states are also kind of different states are fighting for today to bring in more GCCs, and particularly Karnataka being the hub, we see a lot of GCCs here being the center stage, and Hyderabad is also now competing. Uh, do you see that state center play out here, or is it like any GCCs across states it's going to benefit? How do you see that?
No, so it's all about three or four factors, right? How is the land bank? Uh, what's the price point on the land bank? Uh, how is the connectivity? How is the availability of resources, right? Those are probably, and then of course there are other factors beyond access to, international airports and other things. But I think those are some of the primary drivers. So if, and that's why today we see places such as Coimbatore, Bhubaneswar, which are really emerging as the, tier two upcoming hubs of capability centers, right? So hopefully that also proliferates across other parts of India, right? And that's how we would see this playing out, probably.
Right. And one good thing, and perhaps the talking point of this budget has been the government announcing nil tax up to 12 lakh. How is this going to boost consumption in terms of the mobile and kind of laptop market? How do you see that play out?
Well, I think hopefully one of the freedom sales and all that, depending on the shops. Yeah, I think it could lead to acceleration of premiumization of digital devices, digital ecosystem by consumers. Certainly, that could happen. It'll be interesting to see how the price points emerge, but yeah, one would accept that, right? Because expect that because clearly, I think digital devices is an essential for most households today. So yeah, with some more disposable income, one could certainly see some upgrade cycles coming through on that.
Right. And I think getting to a bit technical aspect, I think there was also the industry was expecting some clarification on the taxation of non-resident telecom operators. Uh, but there was no talk on that. Do you have any clarity on that? What going for
No,
here?
I'm not sure because that's a bit more a topic more for our tax professionals probably to respond on. So I look at more on the tech trends and the business of technology. So I would probably pass that.
Right. Some of the key highlights of this budget that you have taken so far from
So
today.
I think if I have to maybe summarize, really, I mean, if you look at the role of technology for nation building, 4 or 5 themes stand out, right? That, okay, how is it pushing the digital infrastructure for the nation? How is it pushing innovation and R&D? How is it looking at transforming people? And how is it impacting common lives and helping citizens through digital public infrastructure, right? So I think these are maybe 4 areas, 4 or 5 areas which stand out. I think the budget has certainly touched upon all these aspects. So, for instance, digital infrastructure, BharatNet mandates, connecting schools, the 3, 4 initiatives which we spoke earlier on innovation R&D, uh, more on skilling, push on GCC, all these aspects. And then, of course, some of the other ones we didn't speak about was on the digital trade platform, international trade platform, which we've heard. Right. So I think all these are hopefully, going to be. So I would say this budget, maybe apart from probably the AI bit, it's, at least on the technology side, it is hit most or a lot of the expectations which people would have.
Probably I'll end with one last question in terms of the 5G technology and what the government focus is on. So if you can broadly elaborate on that and has the budget address those points.
I think 5G it's been a bit silent on, honestly, but so two parts. One is we today have a proliferation of all technologies, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. Most organizations are basically switching off 3G. So that's the uh, natural evolution for because of the nature of smartphones, which I touched upon earlier, which are non-feature or your non-smartphones. 2G connectivity caters to that population. So that I think will certainly continue to exist, particularly in the rural side of the market, at least for the next 3, 4 years. Then I think the spend is obviously measured on both more 4G to build out capacity, and then wherever you have a lot of urban demand, you would possibly look at 5G spend. So I think corporate India, the telco corporate India continues to spend in, and depending on their capacity and coverage requirements, they continue to spend that. So I think the spectrum cycles are over. The uh, everybody has the spectrum too, and they are, I think, on the pathway of capex in their respective network build out journeys.
Right. In terms of what you had expected and has the budget delivered, and then is there something that perhaps in the next budget that could be addressed?
So I think like we spoke, if AI appeared 260 times in the survey, but unfortunately it got 500 CR, I think that's probably something we could have hoped for more. But yeah, other than that, I think as I mentioned, digital infrastructure, we've kind of ticked a bit. Uh, the promotion of R&D innovation through the 20,000 crore fund, the fund of funds, the PM fellowship scheme. I think that's, and of course, some of these don't just impact technology, it would lead to R&D in other sectors as well, but hopefully technology will have a big chunk of that. And then the skilling aspects, right? So I think I would take this away fairly happy as a technology practitioner out there.
Great. Thank you, Sid. Thank you for your valuable comments. I will reiterate some of the points to my readers again in terms of what the government has done over the budget in terms of the allocations. So, taking it forward, I'm just putting across certain points to our readers, viewers. Um in terms of the research and development, the government has focused on allocating 20,000 crore for private sector driven research and development. Again, DeepTech Fund has been announced. PM Research Fellowship, the government announced 10,000 fellowships for technology research in IITs and ISCs over the next 5 years. The government also spoke about geospatial mission and then, putting up modernizing land records, urban planning and infrastructure design. Center for Excellence, 500 crore allocated for establishing of AI Center of Excellence focused on education. On the digital infrastructure and internet front, BharatNet, a unified digital platform for international trade documentation, was announced. Again, on the expansion of IIT infrastructure, additional capacity of 6,500 more students in five IITs that the government kind of did it post 2014. It was summarized. In terms of the National Digital Repository for knowledge sharing, conservation of Indian manuscripts that they spoke about. Lastly, in terms of the 5G and net connectivity, I think a focus was on high skilled talent and leveraging the opportunities that arises have been announced. That's all from our end, and thank you very much. Thank you, Sid. Thank you.
Thanks again for having me. It was a pleasure. Have a good one.
Thank you.